Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. If you're regular here, you know I review many photographic, audio and video related products. And if you're new here, well, that's exactly what I do. Now today we're taking a look at a lens that has been sent to me by the manufacturer for review, and it's quite an interesting lens. And at first when I took it out of the box I thought, well, how bizarre. It's really weighty. It's 720 grams, so it's a good, it's made of metal, so it's a really nice weight. Some people might find it too heavy, but if you're using it on a tripod, no problem whatsoever. It's a manual focus lens. I'm actually using it on my Nikon Z5 as I got it sent to me as a Z mount. So they do make it in quite a few mounts. They've got it in Sony E mount, Canon RF mount. I think it's in, quite a few other mounts as well. If you look on their website, you'll be able to see what mounts it is available in. I got the 85mm model. Again, I don't know if they do it in other focal lengths, but this is the manual focus 85mm lens, and it's manufactured by a company called AstrHori, or AS. I don't know actually how you pronounce it, but that is the box for the lens. Now I can't show you the lens per se because I've got it fitted to my Nikon Z5, and that is filming this shot that you see now. So as it's an 85mm lens, it's a great portrait lens, albeit a manual focus one. So you have to be comfortable with manual focusing. You wouldn't want to be doing sports and events and wildlife and that sort of thing because it's manual focus, obviously. But if you're doing portraits and the person isn't moving too much, then manual focus is completely fine. I've preset the focus using my I've got a wireless transmitter set to the top of me, a Nikon HDMI wireless transmitter, and that's going to my iPad, and I can see here that it is in focus because I can see the red peaking around my glasses, so I can see that is in focus, and that is great that I can set it up this way without having to worry about if I have got it focused. That's why I generally use autofocus lenses, so I don't have to worry about the actual manual focus. But the lovely thing with manual focus, it isn't going to hunt. I mean, if I do this and all these sort of gestures, it's not going to start focusing on the hand as opposed to my face or the background. It will stay put where I've set it. And you can see there I've got it set in black and white mode purely so I can see where the focus peaking is. You can turn it off black and white and have it on colour. It's not an issue. You can see there it's in full colour now. But black and white is great because it really does highlight the focus peaking. And I can, as I said earlier, I can see that is, nicely in focus. And it's got creamy bokeh. It's thrown the background out of focus lovely, but you can still see the background. So it's not like having no backgrounds. You might as well have a green screen or a blue screen. I like, my audience to be able to see there is something in the background, but it's thrown it out of focus. So there is separation between me and the background. And this lens is doing that nicely. It's an f2.8 at its widest, so I'm quite surprised how good the out of focus area is. I thought it might be a bit sharper, but it's actually quite well, it's quite well blown out, and I'm really pleased with that. Where normally with an f2.8 lens, it would be a little bit sharper, although it is on a full frame body, so you are getting that the whole width of a sensor. You're getting that full frame look, and that's wonderful with this lens. Now, the reason why I said it's quite a bizarre lens, because it does 3 functions, and I think that's great, and it's really good value. It's around the £300 mark. I'm not sure exactly how much it is. You'll need to check that on again on their website to see what the exact price is. I will put links in the description of this video where you can actually find more information about this lens and who retails it. Now, as I say, it's got 3 functions within this lens, which makes it quite extraordinary. I think it's quite fabulous for that. Now, it's an 85mm traditional 85mm portrait lens. That's what I'm using it here for. I've got it on my Z5, filming in 1080 because the Z5, when you're doing it in 4K, crops it in even tighter. I didn't want to crop it in tight. I wanted to use the full width of a sensor, and it gives that lovely creamy bokeh as well, as I say, in the background. So it's on my Z5 and I'm using it as a portrait lens, and that's what you can do. Now you can take stills with that as a portrait lens, or you can take video. It doesn't really make any difference. Now the great thing with this lens, as well as being an 85mm portrait lens and a macro lens, it's a tilt lens. So with conventional lenses, the focal plane is flat. So when you take a photograph of something, anything on that focal plane will be in focus. It's what's behind that focal plane and in front of that focal plane will drift out of focus depending on what aperture you've set. But this particular lens, you can tilt the angle of that focal plane. So if you've got, say, I'm going to show you in a minute actually, I set something up. So if you're photographing 2 or 3 items and one is slightly behind or in front of the other, you can bring both into focus at whatever aperture you've got set. And that is a great thing to do if you want to do product shots, because you might want to get, say you might be photographing, I don't know, a model car, and you want the whole of a car to be in focus. You can actually set this lens so that it can all be in focus, but you can also get a nice bokeh and a nice out of focus background or foreground depending on how you want to set it up, because it doesn't matter what aperture you have set. Obviously with a conventional lens you can adjust the aperture to move, move everything back into focus. So you can set a much smaller aperture, say f11, f16 or whatever, and that will bring everything into focus, or most of it into focus, but you're losing a tremendous amount of light. You also don't throw the background out of focus, where with this particular lens you can adjust the lens, you can tilt the lens rather than having to adjust the aperture. So you're not losing awful amount of light, we're not losing any light because you can do it at f2.8. In addition to that, you can still get the background out of focus because you've got an f2.8 aperture. So there's a lot of advantages for using a tilt lens. Now it's not a tilt and shift lens, it is only a tilt lens, but that is great. But you can tilt it either up and down, and you can rotate it at 360 degrees. So you've got the options there with which way you want to tilt it. And I think that is really, really interesting. Now, there isn't any markings on the lens when you rotate it. There's a little red marking to give you an idea where the center point is, but there's no other markings on the lens as to how many degrees you've rotated it one way or the other. There is on the tilt, you can see what angle you've tilted it when you tilt it. So that is really good. And the locking nuts are, quite nice. But there isn't but when you tilt it, it doesn't click into place when you've got it back, in its normal setting. You have to sort of fumble around a little bit to get it, to know that you've got it back to its normal position. But then it is a really good value lens. It isn't expensive. So I think what we ought to do now is set it up for taking some macro shots and for product shots using the tilt feature of this particular lens. You've seen what it can do as a straightforward 85mm portrait lens. Now let's see what it can do as a macro and product shot lens using the tilt feature. I now have it set up for filming these 2 rolls of film over here on my table. I've got a little light set up, it's me Wii light. I leave a review up here somewhere to this particular light because it's a really, really useful light. I've got 2 or 3 of them. They're great for product shots like this. I've still got it on my Z5, but I've got it in APS-C mode because this particular lens, although it is a full frame lens, it's a full frame when you're using it as a portrait lens, but if you're using the tilt feature of this lens, you are best off putting it on a APS-C body. Now I still got it on my Z5, which is a full frame body, but I've got it in DX mode, which is APS-C mode. Because of the tilt, you'll get vignating if you don't use the cropped part of a sensor. And they do say that in the manual and on their website, but it is designed as a full frame lens, as a traditional lens if you're doing portraits, and if you're doing macro and using the tilt feature, use the crop sensor mode of your full frame camera, or put it on a crop sensor camera. In my case, because it's a Z mount lens, I would put it on my Z30, but I've actually switched it over to APS-C mode on my Z5. At the moment, it's actually focused on the roll of film that's on the towards the front of a lens. Now, normally what you would do is either adjust the aperture to get more in focus, but as I said earlier, when you adjust the aperture, you're going to bring everything back into focus, and you can reduce the amount of light that's entering the camera. You might not want to do that. So you can actually adjust the tilt of the lens to bring the back roll of film in focus as well. And you could do that if there was a roll of film in the foreground. So what we'll do now, we'll just adjust this little knob here, and then we can bring in, and you see it's brought the back roll of film in focus as well. So we now have both rolls of film in focus without having to adjust the aperture, and that is great. So you've still got a wide aperture for bringing the light into the camera, but I've also got the wide aperture if you still want to throw the background out of focus. And as you can see here, the background hasn't changed. The background is still lovely, you know, lovely bokeh, lovely out of focus. So that's the great thing with the tilt lens. You can adjust the focal plane of that lens, so you're bringing the foreground and the background. Obviously they can't be massively far apart because it wouldn't work. They have to be relatively close. You can just do minute adjustments to get it exactly, you know, where you want. That's now just got that foreground roll of film in focus. Then if I just adjust it a bit more, it's quite fine adjustments, but once you've got it right, you're cooking. I'm using focus peaking on the camera so I can actually see that it is in focus, because obviously being a manual focus lens, and manual focus is great for this sort of thing. You wouldn't want to use autofocus for this kind of scenario. So I think it's a great lens for that. You can also rotate it 360 degrees on the other axis, so you can actually turn this. There's a little locking nut just here, so you can actually unlock it to rotate it. So let's now move that back to its center position, and what I'm going to do now is stop this camera from filming, and I'm just going to take a few images which I'll put on the video of, you know, how this is working. You'll see when you look at this photograph that both rolls of film are in focus, but all I've done is adjusted the tilt, as opposed to either adjusting the focus, which would move a focus point in or out, and I've just adjusted the tilt rather than adjust the aperture. So there we go. That's the advantages of using a tilt lens. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already done so. Hit the like button if you like the content of this video. Really appreciate that. And stay tuned for more videos relating to video photography, audio, podcasting, so on and so forth. Cheers for now. Bye.